It was a Monday evening, around 6:15 when the doorbell rang. To my surprise, it was my cousin Ralph. I'm rarely home before midnight, so I figured he'd forgotten my schedule. I invited him in, grabbed him a beer, and we settled in to watch Monday Night Football and catch up. Ralph seemed disappointed that my wife, Lois, wasn't home, but she'd called earlier to say she was meeting some coworkers for drinks after work. I looked forward to her getting back. Lois and I hadn't been intimate in over 3 weeks. She always seemed to have a headache or be too tired. Ralph left around 8, and I stayed up, eventually dozing off in front of the TV, a rare occurrence. When I woke up, Lois's car was in the driveway, but she hadn't come upstairs to get me, which I found odd. We finally made love, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she often found reasons to avoid intimacy. It made me question my value as a partner. After weeks of this pattern, Lois asked if she felt too loose, a question that caught me off guard. I reassured her that she was perfect for me, even though I knew she wasn't being honest. I was caught in a moral bind. Honesty about physical compatibility was important, but I needed to approach the topic carefully. Despite my love for Lois, doubts lingered. Even after she accepted my proposal, I felt uncertain about our future. I tried again to wake Lois for some affection. "Oh, it's you," she mumbled groggily. My disappointment at finding her asleep instantly morphed into furious anger. "Who did you think it was, you miserable cow?" I exploded, unable to contain my frustration. "What's going on? Who are you with?" I ripped my shorts off the floor and stormed downstairs, grabbing a beer and retreating to the patio to cool down and process the turbulent encounter. It seemed like she was interested at first, but when she realized it was me, she'd shut down. Her tone had been dismissive, like, "Great, him again." As I stared at the night sky, I wondered for the first time if her claims of spending time with friends were actually true. Doubt gnawed at me. Then it hit me. How could I afford a private investigator to uncover her secrets? It was as if she could read my mind, and yet she showed no remorse. She was probably thinking, "Oh well, he knows now." Restless, I went back inside to watch TV. I found a blank tape and popped it into the VCR, settling in to watch last week's NCIS. The video revealed everything. I paused the recording and quietly checked upstairs. Lois was already asleep. I went back downstairs, resumed the tape, and watched my wife and my cousin Ralph in our bedroom. The camera angle suggested it was hidden in the closet, capturing their every move. The betrayal stung, and my mind raced with questions about how many times this had happened. Suddenly, a voice broke the silence. "What did I do to deserve this, Lo?" Lois's panicked cries caught my attention. She was frantically dialing a number, urging someone to answer. I snatched the phone. "Why don't you get the tape, Ralph?" I demanded, warning him to stay away from me. "I'll see you at the next family gathering, and it will be your worst day ever." I slammed the phone down and glared at Lois. "Thanks to you and my idiot cousin, I don't need a PI. You handed me all the evidence I need." I retrieved the tape, kissed it dramatically, and played it on the TV. Lois trembled. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "What do you think I'm going to do? I'm divorcing you." "I don't want a divorce," she pleaded. "Why not? You clearly don't care about me." I ordered her to leave. I hid the tape and made coffee, starting a to-do list for the morning. Although our state didn't have no-fault divorce, infidelity would definitely influence the court's decision on property division. Discovering her affair was a shock, but at least I hadn't added her name to the house deed yet. As I worked on the list, I heard Lois leave. I thought about the rapid shift from love to hate, and focused on what I needed to do next, grateful for the resources available online. Heading to bed, I noticed the blank tape was gone from the VCR. I smiled, hoping Lois had taken it without watching it. Back at my computer, I secured my finances, transferring most of our joint account into my personal savings and canceling our shared credit cards while leaving mine active. Satisfied, I slept soundly. The next morning, I went straight to the bank, securing a safe deposit box in my name only and transferring valuables from the one Lois accessed at work. I instructed my secretary to intercept any calls from Lois, informing her of the impending divorce. With each action, I felt more in control, ready to face the challenges ahead with resolve. Myra informed me that Alan needed to see me urgently. When I arrived at work, Shirley, his assistant, ushered me straight into his office. "You've caught me at a bad time," Alan remarked as I entered. "You need to be on the next flight to Atlanta. Morgan's company is refusing to sign the new contract, and I need you to handle it." I hesitated. I need to deal with Lois. She's a threat to my house while I'm gone. I'll take care of it, Alan assured me. I'll have my lawyer, Bert Ellsworth, handle the legal side of things. He's the best. I highly recommend him. He arranged for me to contact Ellsworth on the way to the airport, with the number provided by Shirley. I reluctantly accepted the assignment, recognizing its importance despite my personal turmoil. I rushed home, packed, secured the house, and headed to the airport. En route, I called Ellsworth, who offered advice and assured me of his assistance. After clearing security, I checked in at the Delta counter and waited to board my flight to Atlanta. Mulling over the lawyer's advice, I fabricated a story for Ellsworth about Ralph threatening Lois, concocting a scenario to justify a restraining order. If he tries anything, I'll knock some sense into him, I lied, adding another layer of deceit to keep Lois at bay until I returned. Despite the falsehood, I felt justified, given Lois's own deception with Ralph and possibly others. Ellsworth assured me of the restraining order's feasibility, but cautioned that a hearing would be required in 10 days to finalize it. My trip to Atlanta was productive. I quickly resolved the contract issue, earning Alan's praise. He informed me about the locksmith visit and his son-in-law's plan to keep an eye on the house while I was gone. I made courtesy calls to 2 other clients before boarding Flight 720 back home. Checking my phone, I found numerous missed calls and voicemails, mostly from Lois. I deleted her messages and listened to Ellsworth's urgent plea to call him before things escalated. His voicemail confirmed he'd secured a protective order that afternoon and would serve it on Lois at her workplace the next morning. Grateful to Alan for the recommendation, I sent him a quick thank you. Arriving home at midnight, a sheriff's deputy approached asking for identification. I showed him my driver's license and thanked him for watching the house, assuming he was Alan's son-in-law. He handed me a ring of keys, explaining that all the locks had been changed and used the same key. Lois had visited twice, becoming increasingly agitated when she couldn't get in. Inside, the answering machine was blinking, but, exhausted, I turned off the phone and went straight to bed. In the morning, I checked the answering machine. All the messages were from Lois, repeating the same desperate plea to call her. Too late, honey, I thought. At work, Myra informed me of Lois's persistent calls, but assured me she hadn't put any of them through. I thanked her for her support. You say that to all the girls, Myra joked as I kissed her forehead. In Alan's office, I updated him on the situation and thanked him for his help. What are you going to do next? Alan asked. Get on with life. Maybe find someone who'll put up with me. Things will get better, Alan encouraged. Back in my office, I focused on work and called Ellsworth, who confirmed the paperwork would be filed by 10 and offered to serve Lois before lunch. I agreed. Myra invited me to lunch. We went to Trox, where she offered support, understanding the difficulties of divorce. I could use some cheering up, I admitted. Myra handed me a piece of paper. Here's today's attempt at cheering you up. Glancing at it, I saw a list of names. What's this? A list of girls interested in you now that you're single again. Flipping through it, I saw a few surprises. Liz Fisher from accounting, isn't she engaged? Was. She kicked him out after she caught him cheating. You really think she's into me? I know she is. She once said she'd snatch you up in a heartbeat if you were single. I scanned the list again. 7 names. Besides Myra, 2 others piqued my interest. So you're saying they're all interested? I've heard them express interest in you, she confirmed. I grinned. I notice your name isn't on here. I considered it, but given the circumstances, I think I'll pass. Why? Because besides being married, you're in the middle of a messy divorce because your wife cheated. I figured dating a married woman wouldn't be top of mind for you. You'd be surprised. I thought you and Harold were solid. We were. Until I discovered he was sleeping with his secretary. Instead of divorce, I'm choosing kindness. You're wrong. Even knowing you were married wouldn't stop me. You should have put your name on the list. You'd be perfect for me right now. Now I know you're joking. I'm far from perfect, she laughed. That's where you're mistaken. You have one characteristic they all lack. And what's that? You're married and they're not. You'll have to explain that one. Right now, I don't need an emotional connection. It would be too easy to get involved with those 3 on your list that I'm interested in. You're already attached and seem pretty keen on getting back at your husband. If we got involved, it would be purely physical. Are you serious? Absolutely. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't pursue a married woman. But if she were free, that's a different story. What about a long lunch then? Not today, but I'm free tomorrow. It's a date. Hypocritical? Not at all. According to Ellsworth, once Lois is served with the divorce papers, we're legally separated. At 2:45, Lois called. I knew she'd likely been served. What do you need? I asked bluntly. Why can't I get into the house? What's with the divorce papers? Why aren't my credit cards working? And the restraining order? She demanded. You're out of your mind, I replied coldly. Your cards are deactivated because part of divorcing a cheating wife involves canceling her credit cards. And you can't get into the house because you no longer live there and I don't want you there. You need to stop this, Dave. Losing half your assets over a little fling? It meant nothing. I love only you, Lois pleaded. I see it differently. You cheated, which makes you an adulteress in my eyes. That's why I filed for divorce. We should discuss this face to face, Lois insisted. To my surprise, I agreed. Where and when? She asked. Not tonight. I've barred you from the house. You can't keep me out. Actually, I can. The house is mine, not yours. You'll retrieve your belongings with a court official present to ensure everything is handled fairly. Let's just talk it out, she suggested. Not here. You're being unreasonable. Where then? Lois demanded. Tomorrow, 6 p.m., Angelina's restaurant. We'll have some privacy there. I ended the call. I wondered if Lois truly believed her excuses would sway me. Sadly, the answer was probably yes. Why wouldn't she think I was naive? I'd let her get away with the things for years. That evening, after work, I went to the landing strip lounge, hoping for a pick-me-up. It was open mic night, so I was hoping for a few laughs. I sat at the bar and Karen greeted me. The usual, Dave? I'll take a PBR and some good company. I've got a keeper right here, Karen said, pouring my beer. Then a woman took the stage for her stand-up routine. A surveyor stopped by Will's farm in eastern Minnesota and announced he had some bad news. I've discovered that your farm is not in Minnesota. It's actually in Wisconsin. Will let out a huge sigh of relief and said, That's the best news I've heard all day. I was just telling my wife this morning that I don't think I could stand another winter in Minnesota. She laughed and continued. The New York City Department of Education reports that only 26% of the city's 3rd through 8th graders passed the English exam. But on the other hand, they're too bad at math to realize how bad that is. 2 more comedians followed her act, and I left feeling significantly better than when I arrived. Maybe there was some truth to the saying, laughter is the best medicine. The next day at work, as soon as I sat down at my desk, Myra reminded me about our lunch date. Despite a hectic morning, we headed out at 11:30. On the way to the Marriott, I asked if she genuinely preferred eating before we got down to business. She chuckled. Being entertained on a full stomach slows me down a tad. I checked us in under the alias Mr. and Mrs. Ralph Tomlinson, a fitting tribute to Lois's fondness for donkeys. Once in the room, we lost no time getting intimate. The rest of the day flew by, and soon it was time to meet Lois at Angelina's. I arrived early and secured a booth in the quietest corner, far from the dance floor. I ordered my usual drink and waited. Lois arrived 5 minutes later, looking as stunning as ever. Normally, her presence would have stirred certain desires, but knowing what she'd done, that impulse was gone. She sat down and ordered her usual Cosmo, visibly annoyed when I requested separate checks. Sipping my beer, I said, All right, Lois, you called this meeting. What's on your mind? Honestly, Dave, you could have been more courteous considering the circumstances. Lois, you're lucky I haven't ripped you limb from limb. Speak up, or I'm leaving. She sighed. You're blowing this out of proportion, Dave. We don't need to divorce. I love you. Always have, always will. My affair with Ralph means nothing to me. Yes, it happened, but it was just physical. Most of the time, I can't stand him. He's never been a threat to you or our marriage. If he means nothing to you, why did you choose him over me? I didn't. Yes, you did. Think about the last 6 months. How often have you been there for me? Mostly reluctantly, doing me favors. Think about the last 3 weeks. Every night I heard your excuses and stayed out of it while you were enjoying yourself elsewhere. And you call that love? Being exclusive to me? Elusive. It hasn't been that short a time. It certainly has. For 3 weeks you've been avoiding me. And when you finally said yes, you were all for it until you realized it was me. Remember, Lois? Remember that? Oh, it's you. I'm tired. Leave me alone. That's all it took, Lois. That "oh, you" said it all. And then the tape, that was the last straw. Then why even tell Ralph those things? Because Ralph likes to hear it. He has some pathetic need to feel superior to you. I tell him those things to boost his ego. There's nothing wrong with you in bed, Dave. You've always satisfied me. Then why seek pleasure with other men? It's not other men, Dave, it's just Ralph. So you don't consider it cheating if it's just Ralph? That's not what I meant. Regardless of whether it's one man or many, being intimate with another man while you're married is cheating, no matter how you spin it. Answer me this. Before you saw that tape, would you say our marriage was good? Maybe. Okay, but not great. I dated Ralph before we were married, and it didn't affect us. You slept with my idiot cousin before we got married? Yes. Then why marry me at all? Because I love you, Dave. I don't even like Ralph that much. Then why are you sleeping with him? Because he provides something you can't. Look at it this way, Dave. Think of Ralph as assisting you with me. You're insane if you think you can convince me of that. Like, if that's all you wanted to discuss, then we're done. I started to rise and she interjected. You'll never convince Dave that infidelity is acceptable. You have no proof to back that up. Don't forget, I have the tape you and Ralph so generously made for me. Are you sure? Absolutely. I walked away, leaving her at the table, a grin spreading across my face. Apparently, she hadn't checked the tape she took from my house, unaware it was blank. Just as I reached my car, I heard the click of her heels. Turning, I saw Lois, half walking, half running in her high heels. I was always amazed at how fast she could move in those things. I need to get into the house, Dave, she pleaded. I need my clothes and things. Though I knew I was being callous, I felt I had earned the right. Have your lawyer contact mine to arrange it? I slid into the car, rolled down the window, and said, Goodbye, Lois, before driving off as she called out, Wait, Dave, just a minute. I could have easily let her follow me home and get her things. It wouldn't have been a problem, but at that moment I was thinking, forget her. If she didn't already have a lawyer, it would take a day or two to find one. Since it was Thursday, I figured the earliest she could get someone would be Monday, and then another day to arrange her return to the house. By then, I would have all her belongings packed in garbage bags with little care taken in the process. If I was lucky, she'd have to take everything to the dry cleaners or laundromat before she could use any of it. Was I being petty? Not really. My relationship with Lois had been easy. I slept well that night. On Friday, I had another long lunch with Myra. As a particularly busy period at work wound down, Myra asked about my weekend plans. Learning I had none, she asked, Would you like to spend the weekend with me? I'd love to, but what about your husband? He's going fishing this weekend. He packed this morning and we're leaving straight from work. I'm at your disposal from now until Sunday at noon, if you want me, that is. Silly girl, dinner and dancing tonight, then playtime at my place Saturday morning. Wake up, more playtime. Dinner and dancing Saturday night, followed by more playtime at my place Sunday morning. Playtime until noon, then brunch. Sound good? Sounds great, but what if we skip the dancing and concentrate on the playtime? That won't do. Your energy never seems to flag, and mine needs a break sometimes. All right then, your plan it is. Back at the office, I told Myra I'd pick her up at 7 o'clock. Pack for the weekend, I instructed. You won't be going home until Sunday. When I got home, I discovered Lois hadn't wasted any time finding a lawyer. Going into the bedroom to change, I noticed part of Lois's dressing room was empty. Most of her belongings were gone. Curious, I investigated and found a broken window in the family room, facing the patio. While I couldn't prove Lois was responsible, I took some satisfaction in seeing blood on the broken glass, suggesting she might have cut herself climbing in. I found a glass company in the Yellow Pages, scheduled an appointment for the next day, and decided to leave the mess until then. With that decided, I went upstairs, showered, and got ready for my evening with Myra. We had dinner, danced, and enjoyed a few drinks. Though we went to bed at 11 o'clock, neither of us slept until 3 a.m. I was completely exhausted after Myra had her way with me. I set my alarm for 9 o'clock, expecting the glazier to arrive between 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock. Myra, however, woke me at 7:20 in a most delightful way. While waiting for the glazier, I cleaned up the broken glass, finishing just as he arrived at 10:10. By 10:40, the window was fixed, and by 11 o'clock, Myra and I were enjoying a late breakfast at Trake's. Afterward, I asked what Myra wanted to do next. Just relax and cuddle, that's all I want. And that's exactly what we did. Our spirits high, we decided to order pizza around 5 and continue relaxing. We agreed that intimacy on a full stomach wasn't ideal and opted to lounge on the couch and watch TV for a couple of hours. Our viewing, however, was abruptly interrupted mid-program. Sunday morning arrived, and with it, the realization that I would have to take Myra back to her husband. This prompted a question. which I voiced over pancakes at the village inn. How much time do we have left? What do you mean? Myra responded. When are you planning to leave me? I clarified. Why would you think I'm going to leave you? Because of what you said about flirting with your husband. I was under the impression you were just casually flirting, not in a serious relationship. Perhaps, but that wasn't my intention. Usually the men I was with became possessive, wanting me to leave Harold, but none of them could offer me what Harold could. I can't imagine trading a comfortable home in a nice neighborhood for a one-bedroom apartment, wondering if I can pay the bills each month. Plus, they weren't any better in bed than Harold, and they were messy, she continued, and I always wore my wedding rings. I don't get it. You sought attention from other men, knowing they knew you were married. True, but I wasn't looking to replace Harold. I just wanted retribution. Keeping them around if they were good in bed didn't mean I was emotionally attached to them, Myra confessed. Admit it, if they started stalking me, knowing I'm married, do you think I could ever trust them if I made the relationship permanent? So I'm just another conquest. Don't be ridiculous, of course not. I've worked with you for over 5 years and you never once flirted with me. Think about what brought us here. Love? I practically gave you an open invitation. You made it clear you wouldn't pursue a married woman and you didn't. I made the offer and you had the good sense not to refuse. If anything, I'll be the one to end it. And I can assure you that won't be happening anytime soon. Do we have time for one more round before I have to take you home? She grinned and we drove off. As I went to bed Sunday night, I felt like one of the happiest men in the state, maybe even the whole neighborhood. On my Monday morning commute, I reflected on my relationship with Myra and realized it couldn't continue, at least not in the same way as the weekend. I was suing Lois for adultery, and if she hired a competent lawyer, one of their first moves would be to find something on me to use as leverage. If I was caught with Myra, Lois would have a field day. But I wasn't willing to go without Myra for the duration of the divorce proceedings. I'd already endured enough deprivation while married to my unfaithful wife. At work, I called Myra into my office, explained the dilemma, and asked for her input. I have a couple of ideas, but I'm not sure they're feasible. Tell me and let's see. You have 3 uncomfortable customer chairs in here. You need to replace them with a comfortable couch so visitors can sit comfortably. I can arrange that. Then you often stay late at work, so naturally, I'll need to stay late to assist you. After we install the new couch, you'll leave, and I'll wait 10 or 15 minutes to allow anyone watching you to follow, ensuring they don't see me leave. That should work. Here's another option. I'll leave for lunch before you, head to the hotel, book a room, and call you with the room number. You arrive, take the elevator to the 2nd floor where the conference rooms are, then use the stairs to reach your floor. We can't do this too often, though. Attending too many conferences might look suspicious. To make it look like I'm at a conference, hang a Do Not Disturb sign on one of the conference room doors before I arrive via the stairs. But ultimately, they'll need to see us together. If we arrive and depart separately, we should be fine. I told Myra to schedule the conference for the next day and sent her back to work. It was a busy day and I didn't get around to ordering the couch until around 4 o'clock. Without waiting for approval, I ordered and paid for it myself. At 5 o'clock, I called Myra into my office and told her she needed to tell her husband she'd be working late on Thursday. The couch will be delivered around noon. How did you arrange everything with HR and accounting so quickly? She asked. I handled it myself. No need to involve them. Seeing no one around, Myra kissed me, even though the office door was open. I was hoping we wouldn't have to wait until Thursday. Don't forget tomorrow's conference with the Ajax guys. Shoot, how could I forget? Despite seeing Lois's car in the driveway when I got home, I remained in good spirits until I saw that she'd parked in the middle of the driveway, blocking access to the garage. I parked accordingly. As I got out of my car, she approached. We need to talk, Dave. Things are escalating. I brushed past her, walked to her car, opened the door, and grabbed her purse, dumping the contents onto the seat. I counted the cash and pocketed it. You still owe me $14 for the broken window. We have nothing more to discuss. Dave, I love you, and I don't want a divorce. We can work through this. It doesn't have to end, Lois pleaded. No, Lois. There's no salvaging this, especially after learning you betrayed me before we were even married. It's over. Lois looked defeated. I hoped you'd see reason, but I knew, deep down, you wouldn't. If you're set on this divorce, I'll fight you. I won't accept infidelity. I know the laws here, and I won't settle for a 70-30 property split. I'm sorry you won't accept responsibility for what you did to me. But your infidelity remains a fact. You'll have to prove it, Dave, and you can't. It'll be your word against mine, and I'll deny it vehemently. I'll claim you're trying to cheat me out of my fair share of our property. You might even face consequences for it. You seem to forget. I have visual evidence of your infidelity with my cousin. No, Dave, I haven't forgotten. I grabbed that tape as I left the house and destroyed it. It's your word against mine, and without proof, you'll lose. You destroyed it? Ralph will never forgive you. He needed that tape desperately. He might even lose interest in you for destroying it. Can't you understand? I don't care about Ralph. Yes, I wanted what he offered, but I don't need it. I need you. I shrugged. You still owe me $14 for the window. I turned and walked into the house. She continued relentlessly, pounding on the door and ringing the doorbell for a solid 10 minutes before finally giving up. Watching her retreat down the driveway, I smirked. Clearly, she had destroyed the tape without checking its contents. She was in for a surprise. I wanted her to, Myra confessed, admit it. If they started stalking me, knowing I was married, do you think I could ever trust them if I made the relationship permanent? So I'm just another dalliance? Don't be ridiculous, of course not. I've worked with you for over 5 years and you've never once flirted with me. Consider what brought us here. Love? I practically gave you an open invitation. You made it clear you'd never pursue a married woman, and you didn't. I made the offer, and you had the good sense not to refuse. If anything, I'll be the one to end things. And I can assure you that won't be anytime soon. Do we have time for one more round before I have to take you home? She grinned, and we drove off. As I went to bed Sunday night, I felt like one of the happiest men in the state, maybe even the neighborhood. During my Monday commute, I reflected on my relationship with Myra and realized it couldn't continue, at least not as it had over the weekend. I was suing Lois for adultery, and if she hired a competent lawyer, one of their first moves would be to find something on me to use as leverage. If I was caught with Myra, Lois would have a field day. But I wasn't willing to abstain from Myra for the duration of the divorce. I had suffered enough deprivation while married to my unfaithful wife. Upon arriving at work, I called Myra into my office, explained the situation, and asked for her advice. I have a few ideas, but I'm not sure they're practical, she began. Let's hear them. You have 3 uncomfortable client chairs in here. Replace them with a comfortable couch so visitors can relax. I can arrange that. You often work late, so naturally I'll have to stay late to assist you. After we install the new couch, you'll leave and I'll wait 10 or 15 minutes to allow anyone watching to follow you, ensuring they don't see me leave. That should work. Here's another option. I'll leave for lunch before you, go to the hotel, book a room, and call you with the number. You take the elevator to the 2nd floor where the conference rooms are, then use the stairs to reach your floor. We can't do this too often, though. Too many conferences might raise suspicions. To make it seem like I'm in a meeting, hang a Do Not Disturb sign on one of the conference room doors before I arrive via the stairs. But ultimately, they'll need to see us together. If we arrive and depart separately, we'll be fine. I told Myra to schedule a conference for the next day and sent her back to work. It was a busy day. I didn't order the couch until around 4 o'clock. Without waiting for approval, I ordered and paid for it myself. At 5 o'clock, I called Myra into my office and told her to inform her husband she'd be working late Thursday. The couch will be delivered around noon. How did you manage to arrange everything with HR and accounting so quickly? I handled it myself. No need to involve them. Seeing no one around, Myra kissed me, despite the open office door. I was hoping we wouldn't have to wait until Thursday. Don't forget about tomorrow's conference with the Ajax team. Shoot, how could I forget? Despite finding Lois's car in the driveway when I got home, I was still in a good mood. Until I saw she'd parked directly in the middle of the driveway, blocking access to the garage. I parked accordingly. As I got out of the car, she approached. We need to talk, Dave. Things are escalating. I brushed past her, walked to her car, opened the door, and grabbed her purse, dumping its contents onto the seat. I counted the cash and pocketed it. You still owe me $14 for the broken window. We have nothing more to discuss. Dave, I love you, and I don't want a divorce. We can work through this. It doesn't have to end, she pleaded. No, Lois. There's no salvaging this, especially knowing you betrayed me even before we were married. It's over. Lois deflated. I'd hoped you'd be reasonable, but I knew, deep down, you wouldn't. If you're set on this divorce, I'll fight you. I won't just accept infidelity. I know the law, and I won't settle for a 70-30 split. I'm sorry you refused to take responsibility for what you did, but the fact remains, you were unfaithful. You'll have to prove it, and you can't. It's your word against mine, and I'll deny everything. I'll claim you're trying to cheat me out of my rightful share. You might even face penalties. You seem to forget I have video evidence of you and my cousin. No, I haven't forgotten. I took that tape when I left and destroyed it. It's your word against mine, and without proof you lose. You destroyed it? Ralph will never forgive you. He needed that tape. He might even lose interest in you now. Don't you get it? I don't care about Ralph. Yes, I enjoyed what he offered, but I don't need it. I need you. I shrugged. You still owe me $14. I turned and went inside. She continued her relentless pleas, pounding on the door and ringing the bell incessantly for 10 minutes before finally leaving. Watching her go, I smirked. She'd clearly destroyed the tape without watching it first. Surprise? I wanted her to lawyer up and fight. I wanted her to rack up debt, spending thousands on legal fees, only to discover I still had the tape, making her expenses pointless. I slept soundly. My Tuesday conference call with the Ajax representatives went smoothly, leaving me in high spirits. Coming home Wednesday wasn't too bad either, especially when Myra suggested a quick encounter on my desk at the end of the workday. After making sure everyone had left, I agreed. Afterward, I reminded her about her late shift on Thursday. On my way home, I decided to stop at the Landing Strip Lounge. Unbeknownst to me, it was open mic night, and finding a seat was a challenge. I finally squeezed in at the bar. I happened to be there when Bobby Denton handed the mic to a trailer repair mechanic from Triple T Sales and Service in Franktown. This guy was incredibly smart, with degrees in both electrical and mechanical engineering. One day, driving home, I heard a radio commercial that I knew was a blatant lie. I started thinking about that and sketched out a plan for a lying robot. When I got home, I finalized the design and built the robot in my basement workshop over the next 6 weeks. When it was finished, I tested it out in my living room. Coincidentally, my 14-year-old son came home 2 hours late. When I asked him why, he said he'd lost track of time playing cards with his friends. There was a lull in the open mic performances, so I finished my beer and headed home. The next day brought 2 positive developments. First, my lawyer informed me that Lois's attorney had contacted him, indicating her intention to contest the divorce. This brought a smile to my face. Second, my new black leather couch was delivered. I'd chosen leather strategically, anticipating the inevitable stains it would endure. This foresight proved beneficial, as Myra and I christened it later that afternoon. The following weeks flew by, filled with frequent encounters with Myra, mostly on the couch after work. However, we did utilize the conference room on 3 occasions, agreeing the bed was far more comfortable than the couch. During this time, Lois called almost daily, telling me how much she needed me and insisting I wouldn't win. She suggested we put the past behind us, move on, and forget everything. Though I could have stopped the calls by changing my number, I took a perverse pleasure in telling her she was wasting her time. Meanwhile, Ellsworth and Lois's lawyer were busy with legal maneuvering. I hoped Myra's lawyer billed hourly, since I'd negotiated a flat fee with Ellsworth, regardless of how long the proceedings took. Ellsworth knew about the tape, but he hadn't revealed it to Lois's attorney yet. They countered, proposing that if I changed the grounds for divorce from adultery to irreconcilable differences and agreed to a 50-50 property split, Lois would drop her fight. I told Ellsworth to counter with 65-35, knowing she wouldn't accept. Ellsworth informed me that he was obligated to disclose the existence of the tape to the opposing counsel before presenting it to the judge, as failing to do so beforehand would only anger the judge. I authorized Ellsworth to use his best judgment, as that's what I was paying him for. I suspected Lois had someone following me. I kept seeing the same unfamiliar face nearby, seemingly wherever I went. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe not. Another week passed, and Ellsworth called. Lois and her attorney want to meet. Arrange it and let me know the time. He called back later. Friday at 10 a.m. I arrived early at 9:30 and discussed the situation with Bert. We decided to have the tape at the meeting, but I wanted to toy with Lois one last time. The meeting started with the usual back and forth. Lois denied the infidelity accusations, claiming I was being unreasonable. Then I spoke. Remember the tape you and my cousin made? No, I don't, she retorted confidently, knowing I had nothing to back up my claim. I'll make you a deal, Lois. If you sign the papers now, I'll agree to a 60-40 split. You have 2 minutes to decide. If not, I'll leave it to the judge. I won't agree, Dave. You have no proof, Lois replied stubbornly. Sure, Lois. I have a tape of you and Ralph. I said it confidently, anticipating her reaction. Just as I'd hoped, she became enraged. Damn it, Dave, I already told you I destroyed that damn tape. Oh, so you admit to adultery and destroying evidence? I watched as realization dawned on her. No, that's not what I meant, she backtracked. Never mind, Lois. I offered you leniency, but your stubbornness, as always, led you to reject it. Let the courts decide. Lois's lawyer interjected. If you actually have evidence, you'd better produce it now. I gestured to Ellsworth. As he reached to press play on the VCR at the end of the table, I said, This is your final chance, Lois. I'm willing to settle for 60-40. But once he presses play, the offer is off the table, and we go to court. Screw you, Dave. You've got nothing on me. Bert pressed play. I stood up and declared, See you in court, Lois, before walking out. Before I even left the building, my phone rang. It was Bert. They're interested in making a deal. No thanks, I offered her a way out and she refused. So, full steam ahead. My actions only intensified Lois's calls. I disconnected the house phone and Myra knew not to put any of Lois's calls through to me at work, leaving my cell phone as the only point of contact. I kept the same number just to torment Lois, amused by the constant stream of unanswered calls from her. As for my personal life, Myra was providing more than enough excitement. 3 days after the meeting with the lawyers, Myra approached me. We have a problem, a big one. I panicked, fearing her husband had discovered our affair. How serious? Pretty serious. Harold has to fly back to Ohio for some family business related to his parents' inheritance. He'll be gone for a week. So what's the problem? How do we manage a whole week together? I thought for a moment. Simple. You leave work a half hour before me, drive to my place, park a block away, and make sure all the curtains are drawn. When I get home, we'll have our time. In the mornings, I'll leave for work, potentially drawing any followers with me. After waiting a bit to make sure the coast is clear, you head to work. We repeat this until the weekend, and then we'll figure something else out. What about a weekend plan like this? We keep the same routine, but Friday evening when I come over, we stay inside the entire weekend. Think you can handle spending 2.5 days with me? What I'm not sure about, dear, is if I can survive 2.5 days with you. We won't know until we try. So we put the plan into action, and I made it through the weekend. However, afterward, I felt a bit down, especially when Myra left to go back to her husband. I'd become accustomed to Myra's presence. She was great company, and we got along well. But deep down, I knew once the divorce was final, I would be looking for a replacement for Lois. I liked the idea of marriage and longed for a fulfilling relationship where I could fall asleep in the arms of a loving partner and wake up with her still there. While I could imagine that with Myra, she never explicitly stated she'd leave Harold. I sensed she was content with him, aside from his occasional indiscretions, and was prepared to stay with him indefinitely, as long as she could have her own reciprocation. I thought back to the list that had sparked our affair and mentally reviewed the names. 3 of the women were possibilities, but none of them seemed like wife material. 2 of them smoked, a habit I detested after growing up with 2 chain-smoking parents. Liz from accounting, the only smoker of the 3, was attractive, but I considered her too young. Our age difference suggested we wouldn't have much in common. A brief encounter in her office, where she was listening to rap music, a genre I disliked, reinforced that belief. While a fling with Liz might be tempting, I doubted it would last. These thoughts occupied my mind during my Monday morning commute. At work, I was swamped, too busy to dwell on personal matters. In fact, I was so busy I had to decline when Myra popped her head in to ask about lunch. Just before I finished for the day, Bert Ellsworth called. Lois is anxious to resolve this, he said. I understand your position on negotiating, but offering her a 60-40 split to sign immediately might be wise. Adultery usually influences asset division, but 2 of the 7 divorce judges are women, and they often lean toward a 50-50 split, regardless of the grounds. We might get one of those judges. Settling now might be in your best interest. After a brief pause, I said, offer her 65-35, the usual deal, and see what she says. During the lull, Myra came into my office requesting some time on the couch since she'd missed her extended lunch break. I obliged. The following morning at 10:00, Ellsworth called. Lois agreed to the 65-35 split. He said she'd be there Wednesday at 5:00 to sign the papers and requested a short meeting with me beforehand. Though I saw little point in it, other than giving her another opportunity to berate me, I wanted to wrap things up quickly to avoid any further inconvenience to Myra. I told Bert I would be available at 2:00 to accommodate her request. We met in the conference room. I sat down and waited for Lois to speak her mind. Recognizing my silence, she took a deep breath. I don't want this, Dave. I know you might not believe me, but I love you. Maybe we can find a way to reconcile and stay together. Absolutely not, Lois. Not after discovering the extent of your infidelity. Let me be frank. If it had been a fleeting affair, I might have considered reconciliation. Say, a few regrettable encounters before we were married, followed by years of fidelity until one resurfaced, leading to a brief affair. I might have forgiven that. But a long-term affair before we even made a commitment to each other? No chance. Lois, there's no fixing this. You lavish affection on a man you claim to barely like, while the man you profess to love can go weeks, even months without. It's pointless, Lois. Myra, I said, admit it, if they started stalking me, knowing I'm married, do you think I could ever trust them if I made the relationship permanent? So I'm just another plaything? Don't be ridiculous, of course not. I've worked for you for over 5 years and you never once flirted with me. Consider what brought us here. Love? I practically gave you an open invitation. You stated clearly you'd never pursue a married woman and you didn't. I made the offer and you had the good sense to accept. If anything, I'll be the one to end things. And I can assure you that won't be anytime soon. Now, do we have time for one more round before I have to take you home? She grinned. We drove off. As I went to bed Sunday night, I felt like one of the happiest men in the state, maybe even the neighborhood. During my Monday commute, however, I reflected on my relationship with Myra and realized it couldn't continue, not like it had over the weekend. I was suing Lois for adultery, and a competent lawyer would try to dig up dirt on me. If I was caught with Myra, Lois would have a field day. I wasn't about to abstain from Myra for the duration of the divorce proceedings. I'd been deprived for too long while married to my unfaithful wife. At work, I called Myra into my office and explained the predicament, asking for her thoughts. I have some ideas, but I'm not sure if they'll work, she said. I'm listening. You have 3 uncomfortable client chairs. Replace them with a comfortable couch so visitors can relax. I can do that. You often work late. Naturally, I'll have to stay late to help. After we test the new couch, you leave and I wait 15 minutes, allowing anyone watching to follow you, ensuring they don't see me leave. That should work. Another option. I leave for lunch first, go to the hotel, get a room, and call you with the number. You arrive, take the elevator to the 2nd floor, near the conference rooms, then use the stairs to get to your floor. We can't do this often, though. Too many conferences will look suspicious. To sell the conference idea, I'll hang a Do Not Disturb sign on a conference room door before I arrive via the stairs. But they'll need to see us together. Separate arrivals and departures should be fine. I told Myra to schedule the conference for the next day. It was a busy day and I didn't order the couch until 4 p.m. I just ordered and paid for it myself. At 5:00, I called Myra in and told her to tell Harold she'd be working late Thursday. The couch is being delivered around noon. How did you get HR and accounting to approve everything so fast? I handled it personally. Seeing no one around, Myra kissed me. I was hoping we wouldn't have to wait until Thursday, she whispered, though the office door was open. Don't forget tomorrow's Ajax conference. Shoot, I almost forgot. Despite Lois's car being in the driveway when I got home, I was in good spirits. Until I saw she'd parked smack in the middle of the driveway, blocking the garage. I parked accordingly. As I got out, she approached. We need to talk, Dave. This is getting out of hand. I brushed past her, went to her car, opened the door, grabbed her purse, and dumped its contents on the seat. I counted the cash and pocketed it. You still owe me $14 for the window. We have nothing to discuss. Dave, I love you and don't want a divorce. We can fix this. No, Lois. This is unsalvageable, especially after discovering your betrayal even before we were married. Defeated, she said, I hoped you'd be reasonable, but I knew better. If you're set on this, I'll fight. I won't tolerate being accused of infidelity. I know the law, and I won't accept a 70-30 split. I'm sorry you won't own up to what you did, but you were unfaithful. You'll have to prove it. You seem to be forgetting the video of you and my cousin. No, I'm not. I took that tape and destroyed it. You destroyed it? Ralph will be furious. He needed that tape. I don't care about Ralph. Yes, I enjoyed what he offered, but I don't need him. I need you. You still owe me $14. I went inside. She continued her tirade, pounding on the door and ringing the bell for 10 minutes before giving up. Watching her go, I smirked. She'd destroyed the tape without watching it. Surprise! I wanted her to get a lawyer and fight. I wanted her to rack up debt and legal fees, only to discover I still had the evidence rendering her efforts useless. I slept well that night. The Ajax conference on Tuesday went off without a hitch. When I got home Wednesday, things weren't too shabby either, especially when Myra suggested a quick desk encounter after work. Once everyone had left, I agreed. Afterward, I reminded her about her late night on Thursday. On the way home, I stopped at the landing strip. It was, unknowingly to me, open mic night again, and finding a seat was difficult. I eventually grabbed a spot at the bar. I happened to be there when Bobby Denton handed the microphone to a trailer repair mechanic from Triple T Sales. This guy was brilliant, with degrees in electrical and mechanical engineering. One day, driving home, he began, "I heard a radio ad I knew was a lie." It got me thinking, and I sketched a plan for a lying robot. When I got home, I refined the design and built it in my workshop over 6 weeks. When it was done, I tested it in my living room. As it happened, my 14-year-old son came home 2 hours late. When I asked why, he said he lost track of time playing cards with friends. There was a break in the performances, so I finished my beer and headed home. The next day was a good one. First, my lawyer told me Lois's attorney had contacted him, ready to fight. That made me smile. Second, my new black leather couch arrived. I'd chosen leather strategically, anticipating future stains. The foresight proved useful later that afternoon, when Myra and I broke it in. The following weeks passed quickly, punctuated by frequent encounters with Myra, mostly on the couch after work. We did use the conference room trick 3 times, though, agreeing that a bed was much more comfortable. Lois called almost daily, saying she needed me and that I wouldn't win. She suggested we reconcile and forget everything. I could have changed my number, but I enjoyed telling her she was wasting her time. Ellsworth and Lois's lawyer were busy with legal wrangling. I hoped her lawyer billed hourly, since I had a flat fee agreement with Ellsworth. He knew about the tape but hadn't disclosed it yet. They countered, proposing that if I changed the grounds for divorce from adultery to irreconcilable differences and agreed to a 50-50 split, Lois would give up. I instructed Ellsworth to counter with 65-35. I suspected Lois had someone following me. I kept seeing the same unfamiliar face nearby. Maybe I was paranoid. Another week passed and Ellsworth called. "Lois and her attorney want to meet. Set it up and let me know when." He called back later. Friday at 10 a.m. I arrived at 9:30 and talked strategy with Bert. We decided to have the tape at the meeting, but I wanted to play with Lois one last time. The meeting began with the usual posturing. Lois denied everything, saying I was being unreasonable. Then I spoke. "Remember the tape you and my cousin made?" "No," she said confidently. "Here's a deal. Sign now and I'll agree to 60-40, 2 minutes, or we go to trial." "I won't agree. You have no proof." "Sure I do, Lois. I have a tape of you and Ralph." As expected, she exploded. "Damn it, Dave, I told you I destroyed that tape." "So, you admit to adultery and destroying evidence?" "No, that's not what I..." "Forget it. You had a chance for leniency, Lois, but your stubbornness got the better of you, as always. Let's see what the court decides." Her lawyer said, "If you have evidence, produce it now." I nodded to Ellsworth, who reached for the VCR at the end of the table. "Last chance, Lois. 60-40, or we go to trial." "Screw you, Dave, you've got nothing." Bert pressed play. I stood up. "See you in court, Lois." Before I even left the building, my phone rang. It was Bert. "They want to make a deal." "No thanks. She had her chance. Full steam ahead." Lois's calls intensified. I unplugged the house phone. Myra knew not to forward her calls. My cell was the only way to reach me. I kept the number just to mess with Lois, amused by the unanswered calls piling up. As for my personal life, Myra was more than enough. 3 days later, Myra approached me. "We have a problem." I panicked. "How bad?" "Pretty bad. Harold has to go back to Ohio, family business, inheritance. He'll be gone a week." "What's the problem? How will we manage a whole week together?" I thought. "Easy. You leave work 30 minutes before me. Drive to my place, park a block away, curtains drawn. Mornings, I leave first, drawing any tails. You wait, then leave for work. We repeat until the weekend. What about this? Same routine, but Friday night we stay in all weekend. Think you can handle 2.5 days with me?" "Honey, I'm not sure I can handle 2.5 days with you." We went with the plan and I survived the weekend. But afterward, I felt down when Myra returned to Harold. I was used to her company. We got along well. But I knew I'd be looking for a replacement for Lois once the divorce was final. I liked being married and wanted a fulfilling relationship. I wanted to fall asleep with someone and wake up with her there. I could imagine that with Myra, but she never said she'd leave Harold. I sensed she was content, except for his infidelities, and would stay with him as long as she could have her own reciprocation. I remembered the list that started our affair. 3 names were possibilities, but none seemed like wife material. 2 smoked, which I hated. Liz, the only smoker of the 3, was attractive but too young. We probably didn't have much in common. A brief office encounter where she was listening to rap confirmed that. A fling with Liz might be fun, but I doubted anything lasting would develop. I was swamped at work Monday, too busy for personal thoughts. I even declined lunch with Myra. Just before quitting time, Bert called. Lois wants to settle. I know you're against negotiating, but offering 60-40 for an immediate signature might be wise. Infidelity usually sways the asset division, but with 2 female judges out of 7, they tend to favor a 50-50 split regardless. We might get one of them. Settling now could be advantageous. I thought it over. Offer 65-35 the usual, and see what she says. Myra came in, wanting some couch time since she'd missed her extended lunch. I obliged. At 10 a.m. the next morning, Bert called. Lois accepted 65-35. She'd be there Wednesday at 5 o'clock to sign and wanted a brief meeting with me beforehand. Though I saw it as just another chance for her to berate me, I wanted to get it over with quickly for Myra's sake. I told Bert 2 encuentros would work. We met in the conference room. I waited for her to speak. I don't want this, Dave, she began. I love you. Maybe we can still work things out. Absolutely not. Not after your infidelity. Frankly, a brief affair might have been forgivable. A few indiscretions before we were married, followed by years of fidelity, then 1 relapse, a brief affair, maybe, but a long-term affair before our commitment? No. Lois, this is irreparable. You shower affection on someone you barely like while neglecting the one you claim to love. It's over, Lois. And I usually answered just to dismiss her, taking pleasure in doing so. I should have anticipated her persistence. On Wednesday evening, Myra and I were at the landing strip, enjoying a few drinks. We went there occasionally, though not typically on Wednesdays, as it had always been my preferred hangout. However, we were there that night to support one of the girls from accounting who was trying her hand at stand-up comedy. We applauded Shelley's effort, but Myra and I agreed she was better suited to accounting than show business. Her routine started with a scenario. A man is reading the newspaper when his wife hits him over the head with a frying pan. "Why did you do that?" he asks. "Because of the piece of paper I found in your pocket with the name Jenny on it." "Honey," he explains, "Jenny is the name of the horse I bet on at the races." She apologizes and goes back to her chores. A few days later, the man is watching TV when his wife clobbers him again, this time with a bigger frying pan, knocking him unconscious. When he wakes up, he asks, "Why?" "Your horse called," she replies. After some laughter, Shelley continued. An elderly couple, despite hating each other, stayed married for years. Their arguments could be heard late into the night, the old man always threatening to haunt his wife when he died. This terrified the neighbors, who suspected him of practicing black magic due to some strange occurrences. When he finally died of a heart attack at 85, his funeral featured a closed casket. At the graveside, the neighbors expressed their concerns to his widow about his potential return. She scoffed. "I buried him upside down. He won't ask for directions." "You keep your damn hands off my man, you strumpet!" Lois's venomous voice cut through the air. I spun around to see her pouring a drink over Myra's head. Before I could react, Myra retaliated, splashing her own drink in Lois's face. Lois stumbled, and I quickly grabbed Myra and pulled her out of the bar. As I started cleaning us up with some rags from my trunk, Lois stumbled out the door, unsteady from a blow to the nose. And who was there to help her up? None other than my despicable cousin Ralph. I dropped the rags. "You rotten son of a bitch," I yelled, launching myself at him. He let go of Lois, who crumpled to the ground and ran. I chased him for 3 blocks before giving up and returning to the parking lot. When I got back, I found Myra holding Lois against the car fender, yelling, "Get it through your thick skull, you stupid cow. I didn't steal him from you. You threw him away, and I was lucky enough to catch him." As I approached, Myra stepped back. "Let's get out of here. Get in the car. I need to go inside and smooth things over with Joe." Inside, Joe assured me there was no damage. He even joked, "Next time, do it during intermission, so the customers have something to watch when there's no one on stage." Outside, Lois was waiting. Myra was already in the car. Lois stepped towards me. "Please, Dave, call off the divorce. I'm dying, baby. I need you. I love you, and I know we can work this out." "You must be the stupidest person on earth, Lois," I said, shaking my head. "Here you are, professing your love for me, while your current boyfriend is the reason for our divorce. And you're not even being discreet about it. You need to let it go, Lois. The only feelings I have for you now are hate and disgust. Leave me alone." I walked around her, got in my car, and drove away. Both divorces were finalized. I proposed to Myra, but she surprised me. "Ask me again in a year, baby. Let's see if we're truly right for each other." After living together for a while, I waited a year and proposed again. This time, she said yes. We had a quiet ceremony at the courthouse. Neither of us wanted another big wedding. Lois ended up marrying Ralph. It didn't last. Ralph was cheating on her with multiple women, one of whom gave him an STD, which he then passed on to Lois. While cheating on me was acceptable to her, being cheated on was a different story. She couldn't tolerate it. 6 years after Myra and I were married, Ralph made the mistake of attending a wedding I was also at. I kept my promise to him. It might be a while before I get invited to another family gathering.